Widziałam miejsca, które...
And I saw places that were beautiful gardens, fabulous coral gardens. And then a few months later, when I returned, it was just a cemetery. Corals are the foundation of the entire ecosystem. If there are no corals, then all the other creatures won't exist either. So when I work on the reef, I'm actually doing it with the other animals in mind. Currently, as the reef in the Maldives regenerates, even areas that were completely dead are starting to show signs of life with the emergence of new, very young corals. That's great, but at the same time, so many corals are dying. All legal and above board, and practically no one knows about it.
Dzień dobry, cześć, witam Was.
Good morning, hello, welcome to Aquaforest Studio. Today my guest is Maria Sotek. Maria is the founder of the Coral Mission Foundation. As aquariums and corals are close to my heart, I am a big fan of SPS corals. That's why I decided to invite Maria, because she is involved in some very interesting things. I would like her to tell us something about what she does, what Coral Mission is, and why she chose to do it this way and not another. Okay, great. So Coral Mission is a foundation. It's a foundation that I established about a year and a half ago, maybe two. I did it because I spent a lot of time in the Maldives. It's kind of my place, my second home outside of Poland. I'm also a keen diver, so I've dived there multiple times in many locations. And I saw places that were beautiful gardens, fabulous coral gardens. And then a few months later, when I returned, it was just a cemetery, a wasteland. At one point, I decided that I wanted to do something about it. As much as I could. I know I can't do everything, but as much as I can, because someone has to do something about it. And that's where the idea for the Coral Mission Foundation came from. And what we started with initially was simply creating coral nurseries. So it involved collecting fragments of corals that had been broken by tourists, for example, snorkelers, and so on. There were quite a few of those, so it was enough for us. We collected these coral fragments. We would plant them on a special frame, on lines, so that they could grow. And when they reached a suitable size, they could be transplanted to their final location. That's what we were doing initially. There was no plan for anything else. It was supposed to be coral nurseries. I wanted them to be on different islands, on more and more islands, so that it could expand in that way. But at one point, I learned about something that sent chills down my spine. Because in the Maldives, there's very little land. The country is about 90% water, ocean. There are only small islands, some of which are inhabited, while others are deserted and have been leased to foreign investors for resorts. However, in the most interesting and attractive locations, there's a scarcity on these deserted islands.
brakuje już
And
tych
investors want to invest.
Chcą inwestować, chcą otwierać
They want to
resorty.
open
Maldiwy,
resorts.
jako
The
kraj
Maldives
chcą
as a
zarabiać.
country wants to earn money.
W związku z tym,
As a result, the government of the Maldives
zaczął
has started
wydawać
issuing permits for the
zezwolenia
creation of artificial
na
islands.
tworzenie sztucznych wysp i te sztuczne
And
wyspy
these artificial islands are being
ukrywane
built
są
on shallow
pod ciśnieniem.
areas.
I co
Essentially,
de facto
this
oznacza,
means that
one
they are
są
being
budowane po
constructed
prostu na
directly on the coral
I
reef.
każda
Each
taka
such investment,
każda taka,
each artificial
sztuczna
island
wyspa to jest
results in a
wiele,
loss
wiele
of many, many
hektarów
hectares of the reef,
rafy,
which simply
która po
disappears,
prostu ginie
vanishes
pod tym
beneath the
piaskiem.
sand.
I jak ja się o tym dowiedziałam,
When I learned about it,
dowiedziałam się, że jest
I also
tuż
discovered
obok
that
nas
there was a
jest
similar
dokładnie taki
project
projekt,
happening
który jest
nearby,
w środku.
which was not an artificial island, but rather an extension of an existing island to expand the airport.
Żeby powiększyć lotnisko. Więc no,
I was simply at a loss for what could be done,
co można zrobić, ale
but I firmly decided that I absolutely cannot accept this. It cannot be like this because we work really hard, dedicating a lot of time to nurturing our tiny coral colonies.
I mamy na przykład 100 koralów.
We may have around 100 coral colonies, which bring us joy, but there, vast stretches of coral reefs are simply disappearing. That's when I started conducting rapid research. It was only then that I truly discovered that there are possibilities. A few places in the world where it has already been done, where coral reefs can be transplanted. It's simply a matter of collecting these corals that are there and moving them to another location. So I made the decision that, okay, we're going to do it. And once I made that decision, I was certain that it had to happen. Then it was a matter of organizing it, especially financially. It was a massive undertaking, but we started quickly. We obtained permission very quickly to collect the corals from there. And we began. I worked there physically myself, collecting the corals. Volunteers also joined us, people who simply wanted to support us, support the project and help out. These were divers who came and assisted us in the process. Can anyone become a volunteer at the foundation? Let me tell you, in general, anyone can become a volunteer, even people who aren't divers. We had girls who didn't dive, but they took care of welding the frames. They worked on land doing the welding. It's really interesting. But what does the whole transplantation process look like? Oh, please tell me about it. Firstly, the corals we collect need to be planted on something. We simply have to attach them in various ways. We have to plant them on something. We need to build a structure for these corals, because in the Maldives, there is no underwater rock on which we can plant these corals. So we implemented a system of steel frames in the shape of pyramids, made of steel rods. We bought the steel, which was delivered to us from the capital island. I bought all the necessary tools for the cutting, welding masks, and we welded the frames ourselves. It sounds as if you had to start from scratch. It was starting from scratch. It was building up from nothing. And it was a wonderful thing, because I wanted to inquire and learn a bit about how to transplant such large colonies from people who have done it, from those who work with reefs on a regular basis. So I asked an international coral group, a group of coral enthusiasts and professionals working with reefs. I asked if anyone had experience in transplanting such large corals, and a very kind person responded to me. It turned out to be Carl Felenius, one of the best experts in reef transplantation, who's been working as a marine biologist for 30 years and has been transplanting reefs for 20 years.
I kiedy on dowiedział się,
When he learned about what we wanted
co
to
musimy
do
robić, co ja zaczęłam
and what
robić,
I had begun to
to w ogóle
do,
powiedział, że on będzie
he said he would be our
naszym takim,
advisor, that he would support us,
advisorem, że będzie nas wspierał, że nie chce
and he
żadnych
didn't want
pieniędzy.
any money for it.
Czyli tak naprawdę
Essentially,
wziął nam
he
całe
gave us
swoje
all of his know-how,
wszystkie
all of
swoje
his
publikacje, wszystkie
publications,
materiały
and all the
z,
materials from the
przeprowadzonych
relocations he had
relokacji.
conducted.
I jakby był, jakby jest cały czas po prostu w każdym momencie
And
dostępny.
he has been
na każde
available
pytanie,
at any
nawet
time,
zadane
for
takie
any
bardzo trudne
question.
pytania, on odpowiada
Even if they were simple
bardzo
questions,
dużo, bo
he
on
responded
po prostu
with
ma tą wiedzę
detailed
ogromną.
information
Tak naprawdę on nas
because he has
bardzo,
immense
bardzo
knowledge.
wsparł,
He really supported us in a very, very substantial way,
merytorycznie,
to the point where we
że
didn't have to
musieliśmy
hire a marine
biologa
biologist,
morskiego,
which was my
bo to
initial
była
thought,
pierwsza myśl, zatrudnić
to hire a
biologa
full-time
morskiego na
biologist.
etat w
But
ogóle.
of course,
Ale to wiadomo,
there
że
are
to
financial
finanse.
constraints and so on.
No więc to, co musieliśmy
So what
zrobić,
we had to do
zespawać
was to
stelaże,
weld the
znaleźć
frames,
odpowiednie
find the suitable
miejsce, gdzie te
locations where the
koralowce
corals
mogą
could
być
be planted.
posadzone. Czyli właśnie to z
We coordinated this with Carl, discussing the conditions, the depth, whether it was connected to the open ocean or not. We found a place that was likely to meet the requirements we had set.
Prawdopodobnie, takie było założenie, będzie odpowiednie. No i zaczęliśmy
And we began the
samo
actual transplantation
zbieranie,
process,
czyli
the collection.
ja musiałam pożyczyć taką
I had to borrow a large boat and we sailed there to the site. On site, we also had to use a smaller additional boat because the large boat couldn't navigate in shallow waters.
Małej łódeczki. I po prostu pod wodą,
Underwater, with our diving equipment, we collected the corals.
zbieraliśmy koralowce, po prostu
We had chisels and hammers, and we carefully detached them.
Zostaliśmy przez Karla
We were trained by Carl on how to detach them.
Jak je potem brać, żeby im jak najmniejszy ten stres
Which ones to take to minimize their stress, how to transport them.
I jakby całą
We followed the
całą
entire
procedurę
procedure.
po prostu robiliśmy.
We just did it.
Również osoby, które nie nurkują.
Also, we had
tylko
people who didn't
snorkolały
dive
z
but
orką.
snorkeled.
Też mieliśmy takie osoby,
We also
które w
had
ten
individuals
sposób
who collected
zbierały
corals in
koralowce,
this way because they were
bo
eager to get
chciały
involved
się w to
but weren't
zaangażować,
divers.
a nie były nurkami.
So this is what we did.
Tak robiliśmy.
We
Wkładaliśmy
placed the corals
koralowce
into special
do
containers
specjalnych
underwater.
pojemników.
Then we handed them
Pod wodą.
over
Potem
to a
podawaliśmy
small
to na
boat
łódkę.
that transported
Łódka
them
mała
to a larger
włożona do
vessel.
dużej łodzi. Tam były
There they were
przykładane do
transferred to
pojemników z wodą,
containers filled with
cały czas
water,
musieliśmy
which we
wymieniać,
constantly
żeby
had to
się przeczytała.
change to prevent
No
overheating.
i taka, że powiem, że tak...
And let me
można
tell
powiedzieć,
you,
taka
it was an incredible job.
Praca, no, od zera.
It was starting from scratch, but it was
to było
truly
coś niesamowitego.
amazing.
I oprócz tych
In addition to the corals, we also
przynosiliśmy
had to handle
także,
some creatures
trochę zwierzaczków, takich, które nie
that
są
weren't
w stanie
capable of
samodzielnie
escaping on
uciec
their
i
own
które
and would perish if
byłyby
buried in the
zasypane
sand.
po prostu piaskiem, by zginęły.
So we rescued these small creatures,
Więc takie właśnie zwierzaki,
such as anemones,
na przykład skrzydły,
starfish,
rozgwiazdy,
and similar creatures,
tego typu stworzonka
and relocate them to a safe
i
place.
przenosiliśmy w bezpieczne miejsce, więc po prostu no, praca była
The
niezwykle
work was extremely
satysfakcjonująca.
satisfying.
Natomiast to, co niestety
But unfortunately,
bardzo
what held us back from doing as much as we wanted,
nas
as
wstrzymywało w tym
quickly
sensie,
as we
że
wanted,
nie mogliśmy zrobić tak dużo, jakbyśmy chcieli, tak szybko, jakbyśmy chcieli.
was simply
To były
finances.
finanse po prostu, bo
Because when I started
jak
this
zaczęłam tą
foundation,
fundację, to po prostu
I financed
było
it with
tak, że
my
ja ją
own
finansowałam,
money.
po prostu z moich pieniędzy
I went to the
własnych.
Maldives
Chciałam
myself
robić
to dive there,
tam sobie po prostu
recreationally,
zamiast
as a tourist.
nurkować tak rekreacyjnie, turystycznie, to po prostu nurkowałam.
I dived,
robiłam też
set
kółki,
up those
zbierałam też
nurseries,
materiały. I po
bought
prostu
all the
było,
materials,
to
all without
było,
external funding.
bez jakiegoś finansowania z zewnątrz, a tu ja już stwierdziłam, że po prostu
But now
nie
I have
dam
realized that we
rady.
simply won't be able to manage.
I plan był taki, że
The plan was to transplant 1,800 corals.
koralowców. Oszacowaliśmy tego...
We estimated the cost for the boat, steel,
opłaty za łódź, za
and the
stal,
individuals we needed to hire on site for tasks we couldn't
osoby,
handle
które
ourselves,
musieliśmy też zatrudnić
such as
na
operating the
miejscu,
boat
do
entirely.
takich rzeczy, których sami nie jesteśmy w stanie robić, typu na przykład obsługa łodzi, cała... Jakby wyszło to bardzo,
The
bardzo
amount
szybko,
required
tak?
turned out to be very, very high. And I decided that we just
po prostu,
can't do it alone.
tak jak to robią już takie
Large
duże
foundations
fundacje i tak dalej,
already handle
proszę,
such projects.
O wsparcie. Tak,
So I will ask for wider support
szeroko do,
from people who might be moved by this cause.
do osób, które w jaki sposób może to
Or
ich
above all,
ruszyć, mogą to poczuć.
from
Czyli
divers.
przede wszystkim do nurków.
Bo to tak naprawdę
Who is actually causing the greatest damage to the reef in the Maldives? Can we attribute it to anyone?
Kto to robi?
Well, perhaps,
To znaczy,
put another way,
największe
the
zniszczenia
greatest damage to the
rafy
reef
to
in
w ogóle
general
były
was
zniszczenia,
caused by the
które,
effects of severe warming and intense
związane z tymi
waves.
falami ocieplenia.
That was the biggest
To były
destruction.
największe zniszczenia. Natomiast
However, what is
w tej
currently
chwili,
causing significant damage to the reef
to, co tak naprawdę w bardzo, bardzo dużo rafy
is the
zniszczy
complete
kompletnie, to
process
jest właśnie
of
ta procedura,
reef burial,
zasypywania
island
rafy.
creation.
I w tej chwili,
Currently, as the reef in the Maldives regenerates,
odrasta,
even areas that were
miejsca,
completely
które,
dead are
kompletnie
starting to show signs of
martwe
life
były,
with the emergence
w tej
of
chwili
new,
zaczynają
very
ożywać,
young
pojawiają się
corals.
małe, nowiutkie, zupełnie młodziutkie koralowce. I to
That's
jest super,
great.
ale
But at the same time, so many corals are dying,
tych koralowców ginie i to tak w
all
świetle
legal
prawa,
and
że
above
tak może
board,
być.
and practically
Bo
no
praktycznie
one knows
nikt nie
about
wie.
it.
W ogóle, jak ja zaczęłam ten projekt, to było tak,
When
że
I started this
tam już
project,
prace były
construction of the
zakończone,
island was
już
already underway,
trwało to usypywanie wyspy, więc
the
woda
water
była
was in very
bardzo
poor
zła
condition,
stanie, była bardzo mętna, był tam
turbid and
piasek,
filled
było
with
coś
sand
takiego wapnia,
and a
który tam
lot
się,
of released limestone.
tam się wydobywał i mnóstwo koralowców było już martwych.
Many corals
nawet
were
przed
already
zasypaniem.
dead,
Po prostu
even before
już,
being buried.
same zaczęły
Most of them
umierać.
had died,
Większość koralowców była martwych. Reszta...
and the remaining corals were in a rather unhealthy
zdrowia.
state.
I to jakby przesadzaliśmy te koralowce
We
wtedy
transplanted the
na
corals
zasadzie takiej, żeby no chociaż
in an
coś
attempt to
stamtąd
save at
uratować.
least something
Natomiast
from there.
W tej chwili to, że
However, currently,
będzie takich
The
miejsc
fact that there will
dużo,
be many
to
such
było
locations,
takie pierwsze,
this is the first one I heard about.
Ale w tej chwili rząd
But now the Maldives government has issued around 20 permits for the construction of new islands.
To jest coś, co się już zaczęło dziać i co się będzie
This is
działo.
something that has already begun happening and will continue to happen.
To jest właśnie to, co
So this is a huge factor that will significantly damage the reef in the Maldives unless we are able to carry out relocation projects,
tą relokację prowadzić, czyli ruszyć kolejne projekty,
meaning initiating new projects with additional lagoons where artificial islands will be constructed.
oraz też
Or the most crucial aspect is raising awareness, because of course we can transplant the corals, but it's somewhat like saving something that is already destined to be destroyed.
takie ratowanie czegoś, co już i tak ma być zniszczone i tak dalej. To jest taka
It's a temporary solution,
tylko tu i teraz. Ale on nadaje
but it also serves to increase awareness
zwiększenie tej świadomości,
that such procedures are
że w
taking
ogóle taka
place.
procedura ma miejsce. Czyli w ogóle przy tym pierwszym
During the
projekcie,
first project, many people from around the world heard about it for the first time.
Właśnie, bo nigdy
So no one
wcześniej
has ever
nie
transplanted
przesadzał
reefs in the Maldives before?
Były
Have there been any attempts?
może tak,
There were
jakieś
some small
malutkie takie
attempts.
próby mogły być, bardziej to były takie
They were of a more commercial nature, where resorts would have a marine biologist who would do something to showcase it to the
Tak,
guests,
to jest bardziej tak, żeby to pokazać gościom, czy
or
może
build a
bardziej
small
tak, żeby
section of
sobie
reef
gdzieś tam
next to
przy
the
swoim
resort
resorcie
for
zbudować
guests to
kawałek
take
takiej
pictures
rafy,
with.
takiej właśnie, gdzie sobie też goście mogą przy tym zdjęcia zrobić, że to jest taka sztuczna rafa i tak
So
dalej.
those attempts
Więc
at reef
bardzo
transplantation
tego typu
were more for
przesadzonych
such
nie było.
purposes.
I,
What we are doing in terms of reef transplantation has
moim
never been
takim
done.
celem i marzeniem, i to jest
My goal and
coś, do
dream
czego ja
are to
dążę,
change the legal regulations in the Maldives.
to jest to, żeby na Malediwach zmienić przepisy prawne.
These regulations currently allow various types of investments that harm coral reefs. It's not just about burying the reef. It also includes activities like constructing ports, expanding ports, building piers, and developing resorts. You know those iconic Maldivian scenes with overwater villas, right? Yes. These resorts are being built precisely in the areas where the coral reefs are most beautiful, so that guests can easily see the fish from their terraces and so on.
I te korale
However, these coral reefs are also being destroyed in large numbers. So my goal is to bring about change in the regulations that would require any investor planning activities that harm coral reefs or disrupt the seabed to finance reef transplantation before commencing their work.
Będzie miał obowiązek sfinansować przesadzenie rafy przed rozpoczęciem swoich prac. I jeżeli do tego doprowadzę,
If I can achieve that, if it succeeds, it will be a change with a global impact, as well as impacting what's happening in the Maldives.
I mam nadzieję potem szerzej
And I hope that it can be showcased in other countries as well.
Pokazywać to też w innych krajach. I
that such solutions exist and they can be implemented. I have already met with government officials in the Maldives and politicians of various levels regarding this matter.
Z politykami różnego kalibru.
In general, everyone is very supportive. Yes, they're taking pictures with us and say the ideas are very interesting.
Mówią, że pomysł jest bardzo ciekawy. Natomiast
however, nothing has happened yet. We're still waiting. Yes, we're still waiting.
Czekamy cały czas. Wiem, że jeden inwestor zagraniczny
I know that one foreign investor has already been instructed to transplant a reef.
Bo nawet w pewnym
They even reached out to me at some point for consultation.
Więc to jest
so
być może
perhaps, just perhaps, this is a test to see if the government is willing to try it out.
Zobaczyć, co to będzie, jeżeli każą.
To see what happens if they require reef relocation.
Tą rafę relokować. Ale,
however, for now, it's not a regulation, but a requirement for that particular investor only. But it's still something. Yes, we have to hope that this is the first step. And I truly believe that it's thanks to you. It's great to see that a real change is emerging on the global market, driven by the heart behind it. Because the Maldives continue to be one of the most attractive places for investment and resort development. So I think the process of island creation for resorts and the reef burial will only continue to grow.
Zasypywania rafy będzie tylko i wyłącznie coraz większy, więc super.
Yes, exactly. In reality, currently, there are, as I mentioned, around 20 permits issued, and these reefs will be buried in the near future.
W najbliższym czasie zostaną zasypane i tak naprawdę my jesteśmy w stanie
organizationally, we are able to transplant the majority of these corals.
Z większości tych miejsc przesadzić koralowce.
However, financially, it's absolutely overwhelming for us. In the first project, I collected funds among my friends, in diving groups, and from private individuals who wanted to support it.
Osoby takie prywatne, po prostu, które chciały to wesprzeć, to wpłacały.
They would contribute whatever they could.
Czasami to było
Sometimes it was 100 zloty, sometimes 20 zloty. Small amounts that added up and could be used for something. We had individuals who donated larger sums, and it was great, especially when it was done anonymously. Just someone who wanted to support the project without seeking recognition. One foundation, which has been working with coral reefs for a long time, also helped us with some money.
I oni nam dali trochę pieniędzy. I to w sumie to wszystko.
Overall, all the funds we managed to obtain covered about half of the necessary amount.
No ja też całą resztę.
Apart from that, I also quit my job in Poland because I realized that if I wanted to do this, I had to do it 100%, full time, not just sporadically. So while leading this project, I basically drained myself financially, even below zero. And I think it's the finances that are holding us back. Unfortunately, the Maldivian government doesn't provide any financial support, even though we've asked for it. Currently, they don't have a budget allocation for it, but yeah, that's how it is.
Może jak ten projekt się rozpędzi.
Perhaps once this project gains momentum in terms of requiring investors to finance reef location, there might be another step forward.
Jakiś kolejny krok.
Tak. I w ogóle bardzo cieszę
Yes,
się z
and I'm
tego,
really
że,
grateful that you want to support us.
Wy tak jakby chcecie nas wesprzeć.
Absolutely.
No bo to jest dla nas...
It's an incredible help for us. I think you're exactly what we've been looking for from the very beginning, but so far without success.
Do tej pory bez takiego właśnie rezultatu, czyli partnerem,
Which is a partner who shares the same passion, loves the same things,
a jednocześnie jest
and at the same time is a commercial organization with some funds.
Jakieś fundusze. Jeżeli będziecie nas w stanie w jakikolwiek
If you're able to support us financially or with materials in any way, it's something that allows us to function.
Jest dla nas właśnie coś, co pozwoli w ogóle funkcjonować. No i już tutaj Aquaforest
Aquaforest has already promised us a boat, which is a fantastic thing, because we had to rent boats for every trip here. The rental costs in the Maldives are very high, and everything in the Maldives is expensive. So the cost of labor, boat rental, transportation, everything is high. While having our own boat means we are becoming self-reliant, we are becoming self-sufficient, so I'm really grateful for that. The pleasure is all ours. Aquaforest is primarily composed of aquarists. What I like about it is that two worlds can come together. I only know coral from aquariums, and you are familiar with corals in their natural habitat, as you don't have an aquarium at home. You see corals in a completely different way. I am an aquarist, and I appreciate that we also create products for aquarists, aquarists for aquarists. Now a great initiative has emerged that we can support and have an impact on global changes that are happening, supporting corals, which is what we love most in marine aquariums. That's wonderful, truly wonderful.
Właśnie tak naprawdę to jest wtedy tak, że
because both organizations have one goal.
Mają jeden cel i to jest po prostu
It's just fantastic.
To jest po prostu super. Ja mam ogromne
I have great hope associated with the fact that we will collaborate together.
I no już tutaj właśnie
I have to mention that Aquaforest provided us with adhesives that we could use to attach corals to concrete bases.
Klejenia koralowców na betonowych takich podstawkach. Do tej pory
Until now, we didn't have that option.
Sadziliśmy
We only planted corals on steel frames.
Natomiast te betonowe,
but I always dreamed of having concrete bases. It was just a more expensive solution that exceeded our budgetary capabilities. Now, we received these adhesives and we're currently testing them.
Sprawdzamy, jak to będzie działało, jak nam się to...
We're assessing how they work compared to the steel frames and how they perform.
Jak nam się będzie na tym pracowało.
I hope we'll strongly move in that direction, so thank you very much for the adhesives as well. You're very welcome. I have several types of adhesives, so I hope you can find one that you like and that suits your work the best. In aquariums, the attachment process is quite different. We cut a coral fragment, make a small ball of adhesive and attach it to the base. But here, the process is much more challenging because you're actually reconstructing a reef with large corals that need to take hold quickly and be in good, healthy condition. So we need to find the best approach for that, so I hope the adhesives will be helpful. They're already useful. That's great. Hope it will work out. What else can you tell us about what you're doing and what your plans are? Are you currently fighting for permission to relocate the reef from those 20 permits to bury the reef?
To znaczy tak, na razie...
So it means that for now, I am unable to plan 20 transplants of the reef because, well, we simply cannot handle it. However, there are two places that are very close to our main headquarters in the Maldives. One of them is the southern Ari Atoll,
Południowy atol Ari. Jest jedna
which is one of the most beautiful places underwater in the Maldives.
pod wodą. Jest to też
It is home to whale sharks, which are the largest fish in the world.
Czyli to są największe ryby świata. I jest tam w tym miejscu
It is also a marine reserve.
rezerwat morski. I Niestety
Unfortunately, one of these islands is literally on the border of this reserve, and the other one is a little further away. We want to transplant the corals from there. At this moment, I have already submitted a request to the investor who will be building these islands, asking for formal consent to transplant the corals. They have already agreed in principle. It's just a matter of getting the paperwork done so that we can start transplanting the corals from there. And it will be much better than our first project because the work hasn't started yet. So the corals are healthy. We can take the corals that are simply healthy, in good condition, and have a greater chance of acclimatizing them to the new location. Yes, okay. You have a method for reproducing reef sounds. We talked about it once and it sounds very interesting. So the idea seems very intriguing to me. Please tell our viewers about it. Generally, a coral reef, an inhabited reef, is not silent. It is very loud, and you can hear it when you dive with scuba equipment. Or not necessarily due to the constant sound of bubbles and so on. However, if you do free diving without equipment and stop for a moment near the reef, then you can hear just how diverse the sounds of the reef are.
Ona po prostu wydaje różnorodne dźwięki. I to nie są tylko dźwięki.
And these sounds are not just the sounds of, for example, fish pecking at algae on corals. They are simply sounds of various creatures. It's like a whole musical symphony. And it's like this. If the reef is healthy, it has a lot of these sounds. If the reef is in poor condition, it is definitely quieter. Also, when we produce a reef, and it's a new reef, meaning it has just been planted, it's silent. Simply put, there's no life yet, and it does not produce these sounds. So basically, only the corals are transplanted, without the entire ecosystem that still needs to be created. Yes, it needs to be created. It is very important to create it as soon as possible, because when this ecosystem is established, the corals become self-sustaining. But until that happens, we have to continuously maintain, monitor, and clean the corals. It's another task that we have to do constantly to ensure the survival of the reef. And generally, regarding the sounds of the reef, there are many different creatures, like tiny fish that are recently born. They don't swim near the reef or in the deep waters at first, but at a certain point, when they are large enough, they swim towards the reef. Scientists have discovered that they are attracted by the sounds emitted by the reef, because the fish don't know where the reef is, but they can hear the sounds. We would very much like to conduct experiments, acquire special devices to record reef sounds, and then play those sounds in areas where we're creating a new reef. According to all the assumptions, this should help the reef transform much faster into a populated, vibrant ecosystem. I once heard a podcast interview with a person from Bali who runs a foundation and records the sounds of the reef. He played those sounds later, and it was very fascinating. He had the idea that playing these sounds might help populate new areas. However, from what I know, at least at the time when I listened to the podcast, he hadn't done it. But it was something I immediately thought of, that this is what we want to do. We can try it and see how it works, and if it does, we'll share it with the rest of the world, to those who are involved in coral conservation and reef transplantation.
No to jest fascynujące.
That's a fascinating idea, and it immediately clicked in my mind that there's a high chance.
Jest duża szansa, że to
It actually makes sense because we are transplanting corals and not the entire reef. And the reef is still in the process of forming. Indeed, you transplant the corals and then they require your maintenance, right? There are no crabs, snails or fish to clean off the algae, so usually the growth appears immediately and you take care of it until organisms start appearing there. Yes, we take care of that. And it also depends on the location.
Niekiedy jest
But sometimes we simply have to clean it twice a week.
2 razy w tygodniu. Żeby i to nie 2 razy w tygodniu.
We don't just go underwater twice a week, meaning we clean one area one time and another area another time, but each spot needs to be cleaned twice a week because algae grows rapidly and the sediment from the seabed also accumulates quickly.
Musieliśmy pracować.
Unfortunately, in one particular location, we had to work on it continuously.
Też ja musiałam zapewnić to oczyszczenie.
Even when we weren't physically present there, like when I traveled to Poland or when there were no volunteers.
Po prostu
I hired a local person, a Maldivian, to go there and clean it regularly. But obviously this makes it more complicated.
Bardziej skomplikowane. Natomiast jeżeli ta rafa,
However, once the reef starts becoming populated, the maintenance required decreases significantly, ideally to none.
Natomiast są takie miejsca,
But there are places, and currently we'll be planting in one such location, that requires minimal cleaning.
Praktycznie nie trzeba czyścić.
It needs cleaning occasionally, but compared to before, it will be once a month. Of course, we need to keep an eye out for any diseases or issues that may arise and intervene accordingly, but daily cleaning won't be necessary, so that will be great relief as well. Great. As far as I know, you're not only involved with corals, but also have a passion for fish and sharks. So could you tell us more about that? Absolutely, because actually, corals are the foundation of the entire ecosystem. If there are no corals, then all the other creatures won't exist either. So when I work on the reef, I'm actually doing it with the other animals in mind. However, something important happened in the Maldives last year when the Maldivian government introduced a new law allowing shark fishing and hunting.
Można polować na rekiny. I generalnie rekiny na Malediwach.
Sharks in the Maldives, first of all, are a vital part of the ecosystem.
Częścią ekosystemu, to jest raz. 2.
Secondly, divers from all over the world come there, among other things, to see them. They are the ones who truly attract tourists and generate income. Additionally, shark hunting usually involves cutting off their fins, which are then used to make shark fin soup. And the remaining part of the shark, often still alive, is thrown back into the water, where it dies from starvation as it can't swim. It's a very brutal practice. And that law was put in place.
Cała społeczność nurkowa.
However, when the global diving community learned about this, everyone was shocked.
Po pierwsze, wszyscy zrobili wielkie oczy, a po drugie, zrobiła się ogromna presja.
And there was immense pressure from this community on the Maldivian government. Petitions were written. I participated in it, but I wasn't an organizer, just one of the participants. And ultimately, solely due to this pressure, after about a month, the law was repealed. Sharks are now protected again, and hunting them is prohibited.
Tylko ta zmiana właśnie, ona została wprowadzona przez ten nacisk opinii publicznej. I ja chcę wykorzystać również
I want to use the same mechanism here, because people around the world don't know that the reef is being buried. It's not being talked about. Firstly, I want to raise awareness about it, and at the same time, I want to create a petition and collect signatures.
I tą petycję potem przekazać
Then I will submit
rządowi
this
Malediwów,
petition to the Maldivian government
żeby
to
zobaczyć,
show them
jak
how
wiele
many
osób
people,
właśnie
divers or
właśnie
aquarium
nurków,
enthusiasts are protesting.
Może też akwarystów.
czy akwarystów, ale jakby jak dużo ludzi po prostu protestuje. I wtedy
I
mam
hope
nadzieję,
that
że
just
tak
like
samo
with the
jak na
sharks, this will help
morze,
achieve
nam
the goal of
wysoce, czyli,
prohibiting the destruction of the reef
zakazanie
without
po prostu niszczenia
transplantation.
rafy
And that's
bez
something we don't have at the moment.
Super.
That's
Cieszę się
fantastic.
bardzo,
I'm
że
really
są
glad to
te
see these
zmiany,
changes
że
and that the
nadal
Maldives will continue
Malediwy
to
mogą być
be an
atrakcyjnym
attractive
kierunkiem,
tourist destination.
turystycznym, ale możemy mieć
But we can also have a
udział
part
i
in it and
poczucie,
feel
że
that we are
jednak,
saving the
ratujemy
reefs,
tę rafę, że
that we are contributing to
mamy
creating
swój udział w
healthy
tym, że
and
tworzymy
thriving
zdrowe,
ecosystems.
działające ekosystemy. Więc bardzo się cieszę.
So I'm
że
very
nas
pleased that you
odwiedziłeś,
visited us, that you
przyjechałaś do
came
nas.
here.
Ja bardzo dziękuję za
Thank you very much for the
zaproszenie.
invitation.
Także zapraszamy
We
ponownie.
invite you again.
Ja zachęcam Was
I
do
encourage all of
odwiedzenia
you
strony
to visit the Coral Mission
Linki
website.
znajdziecie,
You can find the links in the
w
video
opisie filmu.
description.
Zachęcamy
encourage you
was
to
do
support the
wsparcia
foundation.
fundacji.
And
I
with
tym samym
that,
dziękujemy
we thank our
naszym
viewers
widzom i do
and see
zobaczenia.
you next time.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.